We worked really hard with you and your team to develop, an entire chart of the placebo-based trials. This is something that we put out publicly. It's on our website. I think people can check it out right now. If you want to click on this, I'm going to have Aaron go through this for us. Just click on that QR code, and you will get this chart, immediately. But first, Aaron, I was wondering if you could walk us through. We've used this chart, but can you walk us through this chart and show us how this works?
Sure. Should I go up?
Yeah. Go right up there. All right.
All right, sure. So this chart, in many ways, is an accumulation of really years of work, almost all supported by ICANN, drilling down into what were the clinical trials relied upon to license each of the routine injected childhood vaccines. And so, we've fit it all onto one page. There's a lot more to say, but this is it. If you want to know whether or not there truly was a placebo-controlled trial to license any routine injected childhood vaccine, you'll find the answer on this chart. And not only the answer to the currently licensed vaccine, but any vaccine used as a control to license a currently licensed vaccine.
So if it was tested against an earlier vaccine, we also go what that vaccine was tested against and take it all the way back.
We've done it for everyone. We've gone down the daisy chain. And I can tell you, standing here today, categorically, there has never been a routine injected childhood vaccine that was licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial, nor were any control vaccines used for those trials anywhere down the chain licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. And the proof is right here.
Okay, and walk me through how this works.
Sure. So before I even start going down this list, I just want to start with the source column, because it's critical. The source column shows where the information to the left and right come from, and particularly the left, right, that we're going to go through. It comes from these links. And where do these links go? They almost all go to the FDA documentation, to the FDA website. So if you don't agree with what I'm about to say, or you don't agree with the information here, that means you don't agree with what the FDA is saying. Okay? You're not arguing with me. You're arguing with the FDA. Okay.
Got it.
So with that said, let's just start and go through it. There are 2 licensed hepatitis B vaccines, okay?
Yeah.
2. A child on the first day of life will only get one of these 2 shots. In the clinical trials to license them, there was no control group. There was none.
None.
There was none. To license these for children, there was no control group. So they weren't using any prior licensed vaccine. And you know why they weren't using any prior licensed vaccine for injection in children? There is no vaccine that was licensed before these for routine administration to children.
Okay, so this is the first trials ever done. These are first products of their kind for children. So they didn't even test, they just tested against nothing.
Right.
They just tested themselves for
it tested itself.
5 days, 4 days.
The old vaccine, there was a vaccine in license in 1981. Recombivax HB was 86, I believe Engerix B was 89. And those, the old plasma one literally used human blood to make the vaccine from Hep B chronic carriers, right? They got their blood, and most people didn't want that shot. It was licensed for high-risk groups.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Adults in high risk, and then also newborn babies born to Hep B positive mothers, and that was all. But that trial did not validate its safety, and they never, and it's probably why, by the way, they never used that as the control. So here you have these 2 are licensed without any control. Okay. No. Let's look at, for example, the hepatitis B vaccine given to babies. There are 2 hepatitis B vaccines given to babies when they're first born, first day of life, and then at 1 month and at 6 months. One is made by Merck, Recombivax HB, and one is made by GSK, Engerix B. Those 2. Before I tell you how long the safety was, before I tell you how many kids were involved, and before I tell you what the control was, let me just say that what I'm about to tell you, if you told me that what I'm about to tell you, I'd say no way. I don't believe it. Here it is. 147 kids, 5 days of safety monitoring after injection. There's no indication there was a control group. COVID vaccines have over 6 months of safety review in a clinical trial that relied upon by the FDA to license it. Hepatitis B vaccine given to newborn had 5 days of safety monitoring after injection. 30,000 people in the COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial for Pfizer, even more for Moderna. Or maybe I have that backwards. One of the two. One had about 45,000. Hep B vaccine, doesn't appear there was even a control group. And even if there was, what are you going to do with 147 kids of data? If the injury, unless the injury is like 1 in 5, or 1 in 3 kids, right?
Strains credulity. You're right. It does strain credulity.
Would you like me to?
Right?
And let me just, for anybody watching this, don't take my word for it. Go to the FDA website. In fact, can I show this to you? Can I show it to you right now?
Yeah, please.
If you go to FDA licensed vaccines, go to Google and you can search for, or go to DuckDuckGo or your search engine of choice, and search for FDA licensed vaccines. The first result will be a page on the FDA website called Vaccines Licensed for Use in the United States. And I've got it actually open right here. And I'm going to scroll down to hepatitis B and Recombivax HB. And I'm going to click on it. And then I'm going to click on the package insert. And in the package insert, you then go to section 6.1. Section 6.1 in all these package inserts is the clinical trials experience. You know how when you get a drug, there's a piece of paper inside, you open it up? Well, section 6.1 is where the FDA requires the manufacturer to explain the clinical trial experience. And that's where it'll tell you what was the clinical trial. And I will read to you exactly what it says regarding the clinical trial in infants. It says, quote, and again, this is on the FDA website, this is Merck's package insert for the Recombivax HB hepatitis B vaccine approved by the FDA. And it says, quote, in 3 clinical studies, 434 doses of Recombivax HB, 5 micrograms, were administered to 147 healthy infants and children up to 10 years of age, who were monitored for 5 days after each dose, period, end quote. Now, I will tell you, when I saw that, and when the folks at ICANN saw that, we also said, it cannot be. It can't be. So we FOIA'd the FDA for the actual clinical trial reports submitted to license this vaccine and Engerix B. And we have them. And I can confirm to you, the monitoring for safety was 5 days after injection for a product given to newborn, 1-month-old, 6-month-old. So yes, I think the word I said was ridiculously short. Yeah, I stand by that. I would say 5 days is ridiculously short. Oh, and by the way, the other Hep B vaccine, Engerix B, safety review period, and you can look, everybody can look this up again, just like I did for Recombivax B, 4 days of safety monitoring after the shot. 4 days. These are the only 2 shots that a newborn can get in America. That's the first shot they get in life. So yeah, I'd say ridiculous might be too soft of an adjective to describe that safety review period. And again, we FOIA the FDA, we have the clinical trial documents for both of these vaccines, just like we did for the Pfizer clinical trial docs. And it is that safety route. In fact, on behalf of ICANN, we have actually filed a formal petition with the FDA to either do a proper clinical trial of this product or withdraw the licensure. They have 6 months under the law to respond. That 6 months has long come and gone. And despite our constant follow-up, they have not given us a formal response. We will soon be suing them in federal court over this exact issue. Either do the proper clinical trial, because Congress said you are only to license products that are proven as safe and effective. That clinical trial cannot do that. How long do you need to review safety? How many kids? What should the control receive? There's probably gray area. But 5 or 4 days, that is definitely in the area that's not sufficient. Moving on to DTaP.
Yeah.
You have Infanrix, licensed based on a trial that used DTP as a control. DTP has never been licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial.
Okay.
Period.
And that's the vaccine, by the way. DTaP is what we believe is the reason for the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. That one was causing so much issues, sickness, death, injuries to children that they're like, we can't make a profit, protect us from liability. There were other vaccines, but DTaP was a disaster.
Yeah, but OPV and MMR, the only other two routine ones at that time,
Okay.
also had tons of lawsuits. It was all three of them.
All right.
It was a problem with all three. DTaP was never licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. And in fact, as you know, the studies that have now looked at mortality from DTaP, Dr. Peter Abe, a whole series of studies, have found that children that get DTaP die at far higher rate than those who don't.
Right.
Right? And had there been a clinical trial, they might have figured, with a proper placebo-controlled trial, they probably would figure that out. That product probably would never have been licensed. But now that it's licensed, as we know, they'll say it's unethical to do that kind of trial. That's just totally and categorically unfair.
Right. IPV, this is one that Grok said was tested against, for sure, a saline placebo.
Yeah, that
says it right here on my computer.
Not true at all. So, the current polio vaccines, which is iPol in the standalone version, and it's also included in a bunch of combination vaccines, 5 of them, in fact, was licensed in 1990.
Okay.
And in that trial, they reviewed safety for 3 days after injection.
3 days.
3 days, and there was no control group. Now, this is not the polio vaccine of Jonas Salk or Alfred Sabin.
Okay.
This is a new polio vaccine with a new technology, revolutionary at its time, because what they needed to do, instead of taking literally taking a kidney out of a monkey and with the cells still being alive and having to grow and culture on that live monkey kidney cells, they took those monkey kidney cells and they modified them to make them immortal, meaning they would just replicate forever. Essentially cancer, they call them Vero cells.
Cancer, right? Like this kind of
basically like cancerous, right? Because they'll replicate forever. It's just a very different technology, and the formulation also had a lot of completely other differences and changes, which is why, by the way, in my view, no doubt, that's why they didn't use any other old vaccine as the control.
So they did, even though this says the original IPV was tested, the Salk vaccine was tested against the saline placebo, they didn't test the new iPol against that Salk vaccine, so that argument doesn't even work.
So the argument doesn't even work.
They test against nothing.
Test against nothing. Okay. So the argument isn't that they use, the initial one was a placebo-controlled trial, they use a saline injection, and then we use that as the baseline of safety. Right. They just use no control. Okay. So you can't.
They're not even lined up, but did that original Salk vaccine, because a lot of people, since it's irrelevant, but I'll still hear, but the Salk vaccine was a saline placebo, which we now know is pointless because it never was even in this chart to be tested against. But did the Salk vaccine have a saline placebo?
No.
Really?
No, and I had this exchange with Dr. Paul Offit on Substack, first on Twitter, then on Substack, and apparently he's never really looked at the initial, the clinical trial report, which I have a copy of, it's a book, and it describes exactly what those in the control group, the quote-unquote, received. It was an injection that was not saline, that was not inert, which is what a placebo is. It's something inert.
Right.
Okay?
Has no effect on the human body, right?
That's the CDC, that's the definition. Instead, it was an injection that included formalin, it included antibiotics, it included red number 80 or 40.
Dye.
It included a whole host of ingredients.
Okay.
Okay. The fact that antibiotics alone renders it not inert. The fact that it included other ingredients, not inert, had culture mediums in it. That's not an inert injection. Okay. That is not a placebo, according to any definition of placebo.
So Grok is wrong. It's wrong about IPV, and it's wrong because we never tested the newer vaccine against that old one. So Grok is wrong. We just beat Grok there. All right, go ahead. Let's go to HIB.
Okay, so I mean, you can see right here what the controls were. The controls for HIB, again, were other vaccines, but none of these vaccines were licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. Hep B, We just looked at the 2 Hep B vaccines.
Right.
Okay, so we know that's not licensed based on placebo-controlled trial. Hib titer and certain other vaccines, and we addressed it, are not licensed. None of those were licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. And lyophilized Pedvax Hib, in fact, I don't believe was ever licensed. I forget whether licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial. So none of these were
So again,
licensed.
testing all against vaccines that they themselves never saw a placebo trial.
Again, none. Okay.
Okay.
That brings us to rotavirus.
Rotavirus, this again, they're saying in here the original rotavirus saw a saline placebo. So Grok is claiming rotavirus for
They're
sure.
claiming saline.
Yeah.
This gets the closest to to something inert. It's the closest because unlike all these other ones, this is not injected. This is given orally.
Okay.
So it's a little different. It's the normal route you would normally get infected on your mucosal surfaces, not deep in your muscle tissue. And so here, you would think it would have been very easy to just put drops of water in these kids' mouths instead of...
Sure.
But no, for Rotarix, you can read the ingredients. It includes dextrin, sorbitol, amino acids, modified eagle medium, and so forth. You know,
Eagle, as in the bird?
Well, no, that's just the name. No bird.
But I mean, it's not outrageous. We do chimpanzees,
Right.
we do aborted fetal cell lines, so it's possibly chopped up an eagle. But okay, in this case,
I mean, Rotatex, control. It's not a placebo. Included.
I mean, this is outrageous, really, because you're exactly right. I mean, why go through the process of mixing all these ingredients when a drop of water would have done the job just fine? Here you go. Here's your placebo. You don't know what you just got. So what's with like whipping up a witch's brew for no reason?
Well, I mean, I would say the reason is that if you're trying to get a product licensed, you want to do everything you can to assure that your experimental group and your control group will have a similar safety profile as possible.
So, but when Grok is saying that saline, is there saline in the base of that? Is it like all being mixed in a saline? Like, how is Grok getting that so wrong?
It's believing the sources it's reading, which are just false.
Okay.
I mean, it's like CNN's articles with Dr. Jake Scott. Oh, there's hundreds of placebo
600 something placebo trials.
That's what they're doing. They're relying upon these supposed authoritative sources, which is always hysterical because the only source they need to look at is the FDA website.
The FDA website, which is what this does.
Instead of doing that, CNN,
We don't trust the FDA.
New York
We
Times,
went beyond it and got a better source.
Right. They don't go to the primary sources. That doesn't fit our narrative. We're just going to go and crowdsource stuff or rely on what somebody parrots and says.
Okay, MMR. It says, again, this is another one that Grok claims the original MMR says the original measles vaccine in the 1960s used saline placebos in pediatric trials.
Yeah, well, that's just not true.
Okay.
And we know it because that link right there is to the original clinical trial reports relied upon to license MMR2, the current MMR vaccine, in 1978. So we have the reports from the FDA. We FOIA'd them on behalf of ICANN. The FDA eventually gave it to us, always, a fight.
Yep.
And when you read those reports, you know what the control group was?
What?
There wasn't one.
No control.
No control.
Again.
No control. They could have used maybe the MMR1 as the control. We also have the clinical trial reports for that one. That one's also troubling.
Okay.
But they didn't. MMR2 was not licensed based on doing it as a non-inferiority trial or anything similar.
So again, the one we're currently using never tested against the old one. Therefore, it didn't even use this trick that they're saying exists or this ethical issue. It just said all on its own. We don't need a placebo.
But they just didn't do it. And they they certainly should have because it's quite a different product. I mean, unlike MMR1, every single vial of MMR2 literally contains, as we've talked about, billions of pieces of human DNA from the cultured cell line of aborted fetus. You should test that.
Yeah.
Properly.
Yeah.
And
the original one didn't? The original one wasn't grown on aborted fetal DNA?
No.
So they're able to make the MMR without aborted fetal proteins.
They did, but they said it didn't work so well. So they changed the formulation.
Okay.
So,
which happens to be at the heart of a lot of the work you do when people have a religious exemption. They have an exemption, they want an exemption saying it goes against my religious belief to chop up an aborted baby and inject the proteins from that baby into my own child.
Yeah, I mean, cultured, cell components, not only the DNA, it's the cellular components from, I mean, when you grow a virus in cells, you can't completely separate the substrate, what you're growing the viruses in from those cells, and a lot of it ends up in the vial.
Wow. It says here, varicella, chickenpox, early phase 1-2 trials for Varivax includes a small saline placebo arm, is what it says. Grok is saying.
Yeah, well, at least it got it accurate on small.
Okay.
Because it was only a few hundred kids, by the way,
Okay.
which I don't even know what you would do with that anyway. So
Right.
even if they had a placebo control, it was useless for determining safety with a few hundred kids. And we got all these trials from the FDA, like 11,000 pages. They're all on ICANN's website,
Yep.
right? And we have a whole analysis of why that product should never have been licensed based on that data. With that said, those few hundred kids, now the package insert does use the word placebo.
Okay.
So it's misleading because it wasn't inert. Because when you go to the underlying documentation, which we have cited over here, right?
Submaterials,
which
yep.
also goes to the FDA website, it's clear that that was an injection that included 45 milligrams of neomycin, which is an antibiotic per milliliter. That's not inert. Injecting neomycin can have serious events when given topically on the skin, let alone injected deep into muscle tissue or into
why?
the body.
Like, why would you do that? What are you gaining? Like, I'm just going to put something we know some people have allergic reactions to. We're going to make that the placebo and call it saline. I mean, you're going out of your way to do something that makes no sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when you understand.
If you're trying to make your product look safe.
If you're trying to make it look as, if you're
safer.
Well, I guess you're trying to avoid too much of a differential in safety between the control group and the experimental group.
Right.
I mean, that's what it makes
Let's
sense.
put it this way. You're rigging the trial. This is rigging the trial.
Yeah.
I mean, saline is saline is saline is saline. We all know what saline is. They go and bastardize the saline.
It's absolutely rigging the
Crazy.
trial. But and if they didn't have immunity to liability,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
For on the basis they could have made the product safer, no doubt. I have no doubt they wouldn't do this.
You would use this in court. If you could sue, this is exactly the type of thing you'd probably bring into court and say, you didn't do a proper safety test.
That would be Exhibit A.
Yeah.
And Exhibit B would be also that since they haven't determined it's safe, here's the stuff that shows it is causing these harms. And the thing is that they want to know whether or not a product would cause harm or not when they have a financial interest. So, like Pfizer's top 4 most profitable drugs, according to Money Inc. in 2019, were all licensed based on long-term placebo-controlled trials. I use that example to not cherry pick. Those are the top 4, right? And they're all long-term placebo-controlled
all
trials.
The drugs are doing.
Why? Why did Pfizer do that? Because they're moral? Because they're ethical? Because because they want to make sure they make money. And if they put that product out there and they haven't checked it properly, they could end up financially upside down. That's how boards would make decisions. That's how CEOs, that's how Wall Street expects people to make decisions. That's how investors expect people to make decisions. And look, most people have, for example, 401ks or retirement accounts, and that's how you want companies in your portfolio often to make decisions based on the profitability. Good news for everybody in America, the safety interest is aligned with the economic interest, almost always.
So how free market works.
But they broke it with vaccines.
All right, let's finish this. Hep A, once again, I believe this one, Havric's pivotal pediatric trial in the 1990s used saline placebos in double-blind studies with 1,000 children aged 2 to 16 years. That's what Grok says.
It's just nonsense. Grok is hallucinating.
Okay.
Hep A, 2 vaccines, both licensed right around the same time, by the way. Okay? And so they both could have used an actual placebo. There's no reason not to. There was no licensed Hep A. These are the first 2 licensed Hep A vaccines
of their kind.
Ever.
You don't have an ethical problem. We're not removing the ability to take the earlier Hep A because it doesn't exist at all.
Doesn't exist.
This is where they would say, obviously, we should have used a saline placebo.
Right, because it's the very first one.
Right.
So they should have. Instead, Havrix used Engerix B as the control.
Engerix B.
Which is, remember, the Hep B vaccine. The one with 4 days of safety monitoring.
4-day safety trial vaccine.
4 days after injection, 4 days. Okay?
Yeah.
They use that. And then you have Vacta, which the package insert uses the word placebo. But actually, again, when you actually go to the Merck study itself, right, if you go to the underlying documentation as compared to the package insert, and then you look at what was actually in the control, this one's incredible. It included AHS, which is aluminum adjuvant.
That's that
Merck's
protected aluminum. We can't figure out what's actually in it, right?
It's Merck's proprietary aluminum adjuvant that they will not give anybody a sample of to test.
Wow.
Because it's so safe.
Right.
And then thimerosal.
Together.
In the injection, yes.
You ever seen that video where they put aluminum and mercury together and it starts like growing some crazy, wild, you know, foreign monster?
Yeah.
That is what was
that's
the placebo group. And that's what they're saying was saline.
That's
was literally two massively aluminum, totally toxic, and then mercury, the second most toxic substance on Earth, most toxic non-radioactive substance there is. That was what Grok is calling a saline injection.
Yes, but it's clearly not saline.
Wow.
I mean, unless Grok's view of saline is, well, I can throw arsenic in it, mercury, nuclear radiation, and as long as I add a spritz of saline, it's saline. Okay, maybe, I guess.
Right.
But that's obviously not a placebo.
Right.
Right? Which is something inert. That brings us to TDAP. And again, these are the only 2 TDAP vaccines ever licensed. Now, that include pertussis, diphtheria, tetanus. So there were licensed vaccines, but there were of different formulations. They don't give the full dose of pertussis or diphtheria to anybody really older than 6.
So this is the child version?
This is the adult.
Oh, that's the adult
for 11.
TDAP.
It's licensed for 11 years.
Okay, got it.
Right, it's licensed for adolescents and teens.
Yep.
DTaP right here is licensed for 6 and under.
Right.
They don't give the full dose because it can cause adverse events in adults. But apparently it's okay for kids. But let's just leave that aside.
Wow.
Maybe it's because 2, 4, and 6-month-old babies can't explain what's going on so well. In any event, they didn't. Instead, they use, for both of these, actually use Decavac, which is a vaccine that's licensed for adults as the control. Instead of using a...
So they gave the kids the adult version of a product as the placebo group.
That's what it appears.
Wow. Wow.
It's very surprising.
Yeah.
That brings us then to
HPV. This one's in here too. Let me read what it says. Gardasil 9 phase 3 trials included saline placebo arms for adolescents aged 9 to 15 years. It says 2,200 participants, confirming non-inferiority and safety. This is what Grok just said about HPV.
Yeah, it's not true.
Not true.
So it's true. It's not true for Gardasil 4, and it's sort of true, but not true for Gardasil 9. I'll explain why.
Okay.
So for Gardasil 4,
the original,
there were a few hundred kids out of 10,000, over 10,000, that got an injection that they labeled a placebo. They even called it a saline placebo in the package insert, but it's not. It included the entire carrier solution. Everything in that vial was in that injection, other than the antigens and the aluminum adjuvant. Everything else was in there. It's a whole slew of ingredients, and then they're listed actually right over here on the side. They couldn't fit there, or there's a link to it on the side. And here's the thing about that. You could have easily, with Gardasil 4, the very first Gardasil vaccine, just use a saline injection.
For the whole group?
The whole group.
Entire control. Why not?
Why not? Instead, they gave over 10,000 young girls and women an injection of aluminum adjuvant, which is an active ingredient in the vaccine.
First of all, but I thought it's illegal to do something on innocent people that can only cause harm and has no benefit. The aluminum provides no health benefit whatsoever, right? It's a known neurotoxin. So you're telling me they took innocent girls, didn't even give them the possibility if HPV was going to work to protect them from HPV, only put their body at risk by injecting them with a known neurotoxin that has only the potential to hurt with no benefit. That should have been an illegal trial, shouldn't it?
Totally unethical.
Totally unethical.
It's completely and utterly unethical to inject a human being in a medical experiment with something that has absolutely no therapeutic benefit. In fact, the opposite. Aluminum adjuvants are used, for example, in animal trials to induce autoimmunity.
Right. Cause autoimmune disease in animals so we can study it.
And in fact, you know, when you look at the Gardasil 4 clinical trial results, you know, the group that got Gardasil 4, like 2.3% had some suspected form of systemic autoimmune disorder, 2.43%.
Wow.
Right? In 6 months, completely beforehand, totally healthy girls and women. That's not normal. Imagine if 2.3% of girls and women in America developed a systemic autoimmune disease every 6 months. The whole country would have a systemic, it's not normal.
Right.
The control group, okay, and they combine these numbers, almost all of those girls and women received an injection of the aluminum adjuvant.
Yeah.
The very thing that can cause
autoimmune disease.
Autoimmunity, right?
Yeah.
Some systemic autoimmune disease. So the very same issue that it can cause. And except for those few hundred that we just talked about, did get an injection that didn't include aluminum adjuvant, but it still wasn't a placebo because it included all the other components. There's lots of other components Gardasil 4. So that was not.
Everything in the vaccine, they took out the aluminum and the HPV and said, you get the rest of it.
You get the rest of it.
Got it. Okay.
So Gardasil 4 could have been a good trial. It should have been a good trial. It still wasn't enough girls, 10,000, but it was at least over 10,000. It wasn't long enough. It was 6 months, but better than days and weeks.
And they still saw autoimmune disease in that short period of time.
But critically, the comparator group gave you no baseline for safety. And there was no excuse for it because it's the very first vaccine of its kind.
Yeah.
No excuse.
Amazing, amazing.
But then
what about 9?
So with 9, again, they gave the controls, none of them got a placebo. None of them. Except, and this is where it gets so funky, they did give, okay, a few hundred, finally, a placebo injection. They did. They gave them, as far as we can tell, a saline injection, which again proves you can do it.
Right.
But guess what? They only gave it to those few hundred out of the over 10,000 after they got all 3 doses of Gardasil 4. So again, that's not a placebo control group.
Wow.
Right?
Unbelievable.
So, you know, which is just nonsensical in any event.
Like if you're testing radioactivity, say you have to take 3 shots of the radioactivity. Once you're done with that, we're going to give you a placebo shot and say, see, placebo group is just radioactive as the rest of them.
Basically.
I mean, that's not,
it's not exactly the same, but it's close.
But you get the idea.
But here's the part that's even most troubling. Think about this. It was only a few hundred in each that they did this with.
Why not half the group?
Why not do the whole group?
Right.
Why only a few hundred? You know, a few hundred is never enough, really, to detect anything but the most common potential issue.
Right.
So, you know, they've rigged it, as you said, in a number of ways. 1, they don't review safety long enough. 2, they underpower it. They don't put enough young children in it to study its safety.
Yeah.
And then 3, they don't have a proper control with the baseline. I mean, it's just all 3.
Wow.
Meaning the control is just one of the problems. That brings us to meningococcal, okay, ACWY, MEN4. And here are the 3. Currently, it's really just 2 being used. At the time we got to update this. It's been so long. I mean, the truth has been out there so long. Menactra was licensed based on a trial where MenoImmune was used as the control. And MenoImmune was licensed based on no placebo-controlled trial. In fact, this is the most wild thing, right? In section 6.1 of each package insert, and this is where you want to start, the FDA regulations, the federal law requires a summary of the clinical trial relied upon to license that product. Take notes, CNN and New York Times, okay?
Right.
It's got to be right there. So when you go to MenoImmune's package insert, do you know what trial it describes? It describes the trial in which it was used as the control.
No way.
To license Menactra.
It tries to reverse it.
And you know what Menactra's package insert uses?
MenoImmune.
The same trial.
The same trial.
The same trial.
So they both use their trial against each other as proof that they're both safe.
The package inserts for these use the same trial in their package insert. Because
that's amazing.
And the reason is we did a bunch of historical research on behalf of ICANN. And what we found was the initial trial for MenoImmune is so ridiculous, and it was not a placebo control, that even the FDA is like, oh my God, we can't even cite to this thing clearly. And so they use the current trial for Menactra. So again, no baseline of safety. And then Menveo uses Menactra or other vaccines to, and then Menquafi uses another Menveo and other vaccines.
Got it.
So it's just a big pyramid scheme. And that concludes all of the routine recommended vaccines on the CDC childhood schedule. We just went through every one. I'll say it again. Not a single one of the routine recommended injected vaccines was licensed based on a placebo-controlled trial, nor any vaccine used as a control in one of those trials. That is, if you take issue with that, you got to argue with the FDA and the source documents.
Okay.
It's categorical.
I think we've debunked Grok. I just want to say to Elon Musk, Grok's not accurate on this issue. You have some work to do there. It appears that you're trying, but we'd like you to take a look at our chart here, and you can do that work, or have your scientists do that work, or however Grok does that work. Aaron, we were going to try and beat this Grok thing in time. I think you just did it. I think let's just leave it right there. People can do this work. You can run this test. If you at home want to challenge Grok, go ahead and pull out this document. Let's bring it up one more time. If you want to have this document in your hands, that is the most thorough document ever made on the placebo trials, there it is. You can just click on that QR code and you will have a copy. I'm assuming eventually we're going to get to the place where they say we never needed to do placebo trials or saline trials, because I want to get to that place. I want to deal with that battle, which I know is out there. I know this is where this is going to go, but I'm so tired of hearing doctors say in these podcasts with me or in a challenging debate, they have been done, just the original version, so you just took us through it. And I'm going to send this piece of video every time they say that to me and go, here you go, here's every single vaccine. Prove this wrong or I'm not coming back on your podcast. Right?
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
And I think that you should also ask doctors, after they look at the package insert, for example, just for these Hep B vaccines, how can they possibly ethically give this product to any child? Because a product that has not been properly licensed, the ethics, the bioethics would tell you it is unethical to use that product.
Is it possible, there's one lawsuit right now out there that's just saying the entire vaccine program has never been tested, it's never been proven to be safe. Paul Thomas is one of them. Is a lawsuit, should we be attacking the entire schedule like that? Or do we have to take it in little pieces? I know we're working at this. What's the future we're all staring at it. They're giving our children products that have never been tested for safety.
At the least, parents should know. They should be informed. They should understand what the truth is. And as it stands right now, the federal government for forever, the state health departments, and apparently even Grok are still misleading parents, and that needs to stop.